Hello everyone. Today we're going to be building this React slider over here, this component. Now, it is actually in the middle if I can show you like this, but as you can tell, I have problems with my screen recording, so you're just going to see it a bit to the right. So sorry for that. Now, the slider is going to have these two buttons that we're going to be switching, and we're going to have a couple of images that we're going to be rotating. Perfect way to show some decent information in your site. You're going to be using these sliders quite a lot in your life. And also what I did is these dots over here. So as you can see, these dots are going to be painted blue on the index which the photo is actually positioned. So now if I go to the right over here, I am going to actually make this circle blue. So let's see. On the right, as you can see, the circle, on the right, the circle. And if I go one more time on the right, since we're going to be going back to the beginning, right? So as carousel, I'm just going to paint this blue. Boom. So as you can see, everything is working fine. We can also go backwards. All right. So pretty amazing project, something that you're going to be using very frequently. So let's see how to do it in React. Okay. Now we did open a brand new Visual Studio window, and I'm going to say React, actually npx create React app as usual, and I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to give it slider tutorial, just like this. So let's actually wait. It's going to create and set up the React stuff. It takes around 2-3 minutes for me for this currently PC. And once we're actually done, you're going to see happy hacking right over here, and then we can start work. All right, we are ready. Happy hacking over here. Let's actually go to the slider tutorial, and we are going to delete a couple of stuff. Now, the first thing that I want to delete, and probably it's going to be a bit loud for you, so sorry about that. I'm going to delete this logo, favorite icon. Then I'm going to go to source. I'm pretty much going to remove everything from app CSS. Then I'm going to remove this logo over here. I'm going to remove this thing over here. I'm going to leave it like this. App test.js, index CSS is going to go, index.js, this thing, and this thing over here are going to go. This logo and setup tests. All right, good. So now currently we do have a project. I'm not going to commit anything because I'm not entirely sure where I'm going to commit them. To be honest, I did create a new folder, so I'll probably just commit it over there, but I never set up source control, so that's why I don't know why I'm seeing this. Okay, anyway, now let's go to first say npm, and then I'm going to go with start just to see that everything compiles and is working properly. Something else is running on the board. Oh, all right. Let's first finish the application that I was showing you. Okay, the application should be terminated. I'm going to say no, and then I'm going to say npm start again. Good. This time the port is going to be free, I believe. All right, starting the development server, and here we're having the localhost 3000. So everything is actually compiling successfully now. We're not going to have any more need with this. So let's actually start building the slider. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go to source, create new folder, and I'm going to say components, yes, and here, or we can just say slider, it doesn't matter. Here I'm going to create two files, slider.jsx, and the next one is going to be slider.css. Good. Here I'm going to say RAFCE tab, and if you do not have this, you can go to extensions, React over here, and I believe it was called React Snippets, something like this. I believe it's this ES7 React native snippets. I believe it's that. I don't know if I have anything else installed, to be honest. Let's say snip, and probably we're going to get quite a lot. So I do have, no, I don't have it. Yeah, I think it's this. Try to install it, and so we have also Unity. Nice. Okay, try to install this. React Simple, not React Simple Snippets, but ES7. And then we can just say this thing over here. So just install this, try it. If it doesn't work out, even though I think it should, just type this. You have to import from React, and you have to just return something, right? So it's something super hard to do. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the app.js and actually render my components, right? Now, before I do render my components, first of all, I'm going to create the data. Now, usually in the real world, you're going to get this data. So you're going to get some photos, right, from the internet or from the web browser, for example, not from the web browser, from the server, sorry. Now, if I'm creating something that's going to be full stack e-commerce application, I'm going to have a creation page. I'm going to put, let's say, some phone picture over here, some details, and then I'm going to push it to the DB. And then in the client, I'm just going to retrieve this data from here. So I'm just going to know what kind of a picture I need to depict over here since I have it stored in the DB. All right. Now, we're not going to have this. We're not going to go as complicated, but I'm going to create static data. It's something that we took from server. You can imagine it like this. And I'm just going to call console const data is going to be equal to an array. And the array is going to be holding a couple of stuff. So let's just say we're going to have 5 pictures. And here I'm going to have URL, which is going to be something. And then we're going to have, after the URL, we're going to have the title, even though we're probably not going to use it. So for now, I'm just going to say URL. There we go. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to place it in all of the objects that we have over here. And currently we need to choose photos. So let's actually go and choose. Now, me personally, I just said nice photos over here. And now you can just create some random photos. Now get them. The way you're going to get them, though, is very important. Now, I cannot. Actually, I can move it right over here. All right. There we go. So the way you're actually going to get them, you're not going to just copy this link over here that you have right over here, this one. You're not going to copy it because you're going to try to access some API to retrieve a photo. And this is going to be a problem. It's probably going to say course, which is cross-origin something. And you're going to get a problem because you're going to need some initial setups. The way we're going to retrieve photos is you're going to copy image address. So in every single photo that you actually like, you're going to click on it and say copy image address. That's it. You do not take this link over here, the Google link. You just take this link over here, copy image address. So let me now put the rendering quadrant right over here. And I'm going to take this image, for example, copy image address. Then I'm going to go to the Visual Studio and obviously place it over here. And I'm going to do the same to all these beautiful photos. Now, usually, in order for it to be good, this photo was pretty big, 5,000 pixels by 3,000. I'm going to be searching for something like this because the other ones are going to be ridiculous. Okay, this one is good. I'm just going to copy it as well. And you get the idea. You're going to copy it and you're going to place it into the URL. Now, probably I'm going to skip this because I'm not finding them quick. Oh yeah, actually, okay. Copy image address. And by the way, you can do it from here as well. I don't know that. So let's just say this, and you can skip this part. Obviously, you're just going to choose images that you like. This one is also good. So copy image address. It's going to be decent. And my idea is to be kind of the same rendering sizes because otherwise it's going to look a little bit sketchy. It's not going to be bad. It's just going to be very sketchy. So this one is not so big, but it's going to be all right. Good. Currently, we have the data. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass this data to my slider component because I need to create the slider based on the data. And here, I'm just going to say slider, tap, and you can see that I've imported it here. And I'm just going to say data is going to be equal to data. Boom, that's pretty much it. So that's all of the work that we have to do in app.js. Now, since I'm passing here data to be equal to data, I need to actually go to the slider.js and I need to say to the function, to the component, you're going to be expecting a thing called data. Now you can take props and you can just say then prop.data, which is going to be probably better. But as I said, it's not going to be a complicated project, so we don't need to go that far. Now, what I'm going to do is first I need to know where am I actually positioned into the slider. Now, I am going to create a use state, and I'm going to say const current index. Actually, I'm going to say current picture or current data index. Yeah, that's going to be good. And set current data index. This is going to be equal to use state of 0, since we're going to be starting on the 0 index. Now, we're going to be creating the div, but before we do that, first of all, we need to be figuring out how are we actually going to handle the switching of the data. You all know that we have CSS, which we also need to import, by the way. So let me just say, I'm gonna say this, just like that. I'm gonna make it like this, and here I'm gonna say slider CSS. So my styles are obviously going to go here, and I'm gonna be styling the JSX, which is the thing that we know. But I'm gonna show you a trick. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say const slider styles. Actually, can go slide style. And this slide style is going to have a style that's going to be of JSON object. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say width is going to be 100%, and I'm going to show you why I'm doing it. Height is going to be equal to 100%. Also, I'm going to say border radius is going to be 10 pixels. You're going to note that in CSS we're writing this as a border pixel. Can I just say border radius and not border radius? So that's something to note. I'm going to remove all the styles for now. So border radius is going to be 10 pixels. Also, background position is going to be center. Background size is going to be color. And very interesting here. Background image. So background image, that's why we're doing this. And I'm going to show you different ways to do it, but that's something that you should know, and it's very useful to do small projects like these. You're going to say URL, and here you're going to pass the data. So what is the data currently? Now the data is the current index. So when I'm passing the data, I'm actually expecting this array over here. So we have URL, and the URL is equal to something, right? So this is the key, and this is the value. And when I'm passing this, I'm expecting to have data from the current data index. Very simple and very slick. And of course, since we're having data current index, I need to say which kind of a key am I searching in this array. This function, it's kind of like a map if you think about it. Objects in JavaScript are kind of like a map in this way. So I'm going to say .url. .url meaning that I'm going to go over here and I'm going to say, okay, data of 0 index is going to be this one. Point URL is going to be this key, and I'm going to be retrieving this value. So in reality, all we're going to have, obviously, is going to be this. So URL is going to be pretty much this. Wonderful. However, when I'm changing current data index, I'm going to be automatically triggering this change over here, and I'm going to have a new image. So very unique, very nice, very slick. What you can do is obviously you can say const use state as an empty string, and you can just use this empty string as a URL, and that's going to work fine, but I'm just going to show you something new. So now we actually have that. Let's actually style it. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to say class name over here, and I'm going to say slider styles. So this is going to be the styles of the slider. Now this is going to be the container where I'm going to be holding everything. After that, I'm going to be creating 2 buttons. Now, when I'm creating 2 buttons, if you imagine like this, let's go with white color here. I think white is going to be good. If you imagine my component's going to be looking like this. Now, what I want currently is to have something like this, and I want this to be gray out, right? And something like this, which is going to be obviously the same. It's the same size as this one, so this is going to be 10 pixels, for example, right? And this one is going to be 10 pixels. Now, obviously, they're not the same. That's why I wanted to throw it over here. This one is going to be grayed out because that's what I want. And over here, I'm going to have the following. I'm going to have an arrow like this and an arrow like this. It's not only going to be grayed out. It's actually going to be transparent. So you can see the image over here. And if the image is this, all right, this person over here is a very weird person. I can actually see part of his arm here because this is grayed out, but it still has some alpha to it. So it's not fully grayed out. That's what I'm trying to say. And I want to have these 2 buttons over here. So how am I actually going to do that? When I'm creating the slider styles, we're talking about this thing over here. And now I want to create these divs. So these 2 are going to be divs, and inside of the divs, I'm going to have a button. So having that said, I'm going to say div left button, just like this. And I'm going to say button, just like this. And in the button, I'm going to have a symbol. Now, what you can do is you can go to MUI, which is Material UI, MUI.com. And in there, you can actually take, as I show you in the previous episodes, like this one and this one, for example. I hope I do not forget to point an icon over here, or to point you to the video, or to give you a link at least to the big course. I used Material UI just so I can get the icons and I can place them. However, here, I'm just going to say, all right, I'm just going to use my keyboard and I'm going to write this arrow stuff. The same thing I'm going to do pretty much for the right thing. I'm not going to copy this because I hate copying, but I'm going to say div.right button. Div right button is going to have completely the same thing. It's going to have this button over here, a button, and in the button, I'm going to have a symbol, which is going to be a right icon. Pretty slick, pretty simple. Let's actually see. I'm going to remove this. And oh, this is the ready project. This is the already done project. So I just refresh over here and you get, you get this. So I guess when I was showing you the entire project, it didn't really refresh anything, and it was running on port 3000, the image. Now, as you can see, we have only these two buttons currently. Now, writing with white doesn't matter. I'm just having these two buttons. Now, that's what I expect because I'm pretty much having this. Why cannot I switch to? Okay, there we go. Because I'm pretty much having only two divs that are having two buttons. So they're holding pretty much nothing. So these two buttons, how can we actually put something else? Now I'm going to go to Visual Studio, back to Visual Studio. And here after the buttons, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say a div. So I'm going to say div like this. And here I'm going to pass it a style. So I'm going to say style, which is going to be equal to my slide style. That's pretty much all that I'm going to do. Now if I go back here, you're going to see that nothing really happens, even though my width is 100%. But if I type, for example, something like this, I can go now and I can see this here. So as you can see, currently we're not having anything as a style above it. Now we do not have the body configured, so we don't have anything. But what you can see is the background image is actually working properly. What I want to see, however, is if I change, for example, this to use state equal to 2, is the image going to change? Because that's very important to me. And as you can see, it does. So now if I go back to, for example, 1, I'm not going to see something blue. I'm going to see something, whatever this color is. Actually, whatever these colors are. All right, good. So now I know that it's actually working and it's taking the right stuff. I'm going to go with use state 0 and I'm going to continue my journey. Now, probably here is going to be a good idea for me to actually start doing these styles, because the other things that we're going to be doing is the dot container styles. These are the dots that I have been talking about. So what I'm going to do here is just, I'm going to say div, and I'm going to say class name dot container styles. And that's pretty much it. That's all I'm going to do for now. I'm going to leave it as dot container styles, and I'm then going to go to slider CSS, try to style it a little bit and get something that's going to be at least worth looking at. With that said, let's go to slider CSS and start our work. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the slider, and what I'm going to do, I'm just going to, make this bigger, and then I'm going to put it onto the right side of the screen. Wonderful. So the first thing that I want to do is to actually go with slider styles. So I'm going to say dot slider styles, and I'm going to give it height 100%. All right, what's happening to my keyboard? 100%. And I'm going to say position relative. I'm going to be saying relative position because we're obviously going to have quite a lot of stuff that are happening here with positions absolutes. Now, before I actually do this, also I forgot. So I'm going to go to app CSS, and in the app CSS, I'm going to give a couple of setups. So this is going to be margin 0. Now this is in app CSS. Do not forget this thing over here, because I do want to say how big the container is going to be in the app.js. Now I'm going to go to padding 0, and I'm going to say box sizing border box is something that is going to help me with the pixels. And then I'm going to say, where is it? App. Okay. So I'm going to say dot app. It's going to have a container, and I'm going to say width 580 pixels, height 280 pixels, for example, and margin is going to be auto. That's pretty much it. We're done with app CSS. We're done with app.js. Let's now focus in our slider. Now the slider styles is obviously going to have 100% of the available height. Position is going to be relative because whenever we have absolute positions over here, they need to be relative to something. If they're not relative to the diff over here, they're going to be relative to the parent, which is going to be the diff over here. That's very important to know. Good. Now that we're in slider CSS, let's actually see what we're going to be doing. The next, oops, why did I choose it? Okay, the next thing that we need to style are the left buttons. So the left button, I'm going to say .left button. And I want this to be, as I said, if I'm imagining my container like this, of course we're going to give it a border size box, so it's going to be a little bit more like this. That's very ugly, but you get the idea. It's not going to be a rectangle. And I want the div to be on the edges right over here. I want this thing. So in the left button, that's why we have a div over here. And I want this div to be an absolute position. So I'm going to say position, absolute. Then I'm going to say background none. Background none. Outline is going to be none. Border is going to be none. Top is going to be 50%. I'm not going to transform anything. Right is going to be 0. Font size, I'm going to choose 55 pixels. Color is going to be white. Why not? White. Everything inside is going to be white, so let's go with FFF. And then I'm going to say Z index is going to be 10. Wonderful. Good. Let's now start with the left button. Left button. A left button is going to be, if you imagine it's not going to be a rectangle, it's going to be a bit more like this, so smooth edges. This. And I do want my div, so this div over here, I want it to be on the edges. So the right is going to be here and the left is going to be here. And they're going to be holding these buttons. That's wonderful. So let's actually see how we're going to do it. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to say position absolute. I wanted this div to have an absolute position so I can then place it wherever I want. Display is going to be flex, and I want it to grow not that way. I want it to grow downwards. So I'm going to say flex direction is going to be column. Wonderful. After that, I'm going to say top 0, right 0, left 0, and bottom, I'm going to go with 0. Height is going to be 100% because, as I said, I want it to grow as much as possible. So it needs to be holding this position over here, meaning that if my rectangle is this, I'm going to have this height. And if my rectangle is this big, I'm going to have 100% of the height all the time. Width is going to be 7%. Now, you can play around with width and height, but actually you can play around with width because you always want to be, unless you are some kind of a freak, you always would want your thing to be like this and not like this. But I guess you can just make interesting stuff like this as well. You can play something over here else. I don't know. But I want it to be like this. And the width is going to determine how big do you want this div to actually be, right? You can place it like this. You can place it like this. I figured out the 7% for me is actually working. Z index, I'm going to say 9. You're going to see why. And then I'm going to go with background color. Now, background color is going to be RGBA. And I have this color written down over here. So 128 3 times. And then we're going to be choosing an alpha, which is going to be 0.29. Now, why 0.29 and how did I actually figure this out? Well, I just chose a color. I pressed over here. I scrolled around the color. And then I played around with this alpha channel until I liked it. So obviously, you're not entirely entitled to using this background color. You can do whatever you want. You can do red, you can do blue. But this is a color that I chose. And I figured out that 0.29 is actually the perfect amount of alpha channel for me. So having this left button, let's actually go with right button as well. So right button. Right button is going to have similarities, obviously. It's going to be position absolute. It's going to be display flex. Is going to have flex direction column because, as I said, we want to grow downwards. We do not want to grow inwards. Then I'm actually going to say top 0, right 0, left 100, bottom 0. That's what's going to make my div placed on the right side. Also, I'm going to go with width 7%, and here they're pretty much the same thing. So I'm just going to copy them from the left button. Now I'm going to copy them because I want them to be completely identical. I want them to be completely identical. One thing else that we're going to do, since we said that we're not going to actually allow ourselves to have a rectangle, we want smooth edges. I'm just going to go here after the background color, and I'm going to say border radius is going to be 10 pixels. Why border radius here is going to be 10 pixels? Well, because the styles that I'm actually using here are having border radius 10 pixels. So I do not want, what you're going to see if you do not do this, is my border radius is going to be like this. So I'm going to have these smooth edges around, and they're going to look wonderful. And then I'm going to have these right buttons divs like this. Right. So as you can see, the problem obviously is this thing right over here. Like, it's not literally a problem, it's just looking very ugly. So you would want to cut it out like this, right? You want it to be following the lines over here. So that's why we're giving it a border radius. Now that we actually have these right buttons and left buttons, let's actually figure out what we're going to do with the button inside. So that's the next step. First of all, the buttons should be having a class name, and they should be having an on-click event, but we're going to add this later. And I'm going to say left arrow style, and then I'm going to say the same thing. Oops, actually, this is the right arrow style, isn't it? Yeah. That's going to go here. And I'm going to say right arrow style. Wonderful. All right. Then let's go back to the CSS and see what we're going to be doing about it. Now I'm going to say dot left arrow style. I'm going to be targeting this button now, this thing over here. Now what I want is the position to be absolute. I want it to be somewhere into the middle of the div. So if my div is like this, because it's growing every single time, so you can see that height was 100% here. And actually, do you know what I figured out? We're not having height over here being 100%. So that's something that, okay, good. That's why you always should be talking. Now, if my height is this, I'm going to have it somewhere into the middle. And if my height is this, I'm going to have it somewhere into the middle, right? I want to keep it as unified as possible. So position is going to be absolute. I'm going to say that I'm going to have top 50%. Then I can say transform, probably I can transform it a little bit, but I'm going to leave this for now. Background is going to be none, outline is going to be none, and I'm doing pretty much the same thing for all of my buttons here in this channel. Outline, background, and border are always going to be none, at least for me. The left is going to be 0%, because we want it to be positioned into the left div and not into the right one. Font size is going to be 55 pixels. Color is going to be white. Z index is going to be 10 because I do want it to be a little bit in front of this div over here, right? Even though this div, as you can see, is a bit transparent, that's just something that I like doing because I know that I did my part correctly. And of course, I want to say cursor pointer. There we go. I want, when I hover on it, I want to see a pointer. So left arrow style, that's pretty much it, I believe. Now let's go to point right arrow style. Right, onto the right arrow style, we're still going to have the same thing. So position is going to be absolute. Background is still going to be none. None. Oh, come on, please don't do this. Okay, good. Outline is going to be none. Border is going to be none. Pretty much the same thing. Top is going to be 50%, you guessed it, because we want it to be into the middle, even onto the right side, as well onto the left. Right is going to be 0. As you can see, pretty much the only difference is that left is 0%, and here we have right 0. Right, you can just delete this percent over here. All right. Font size is going to be 55 pixels, the same. Color, the same. Z index, the same. And cursor is going to be pointer, of course. Good. Now we actually have everything. I'm very curious about how does it actually look so far. And there you go. Now, what I do not like is, as you can see, these are not into the middle. I can find the middle somewhere around here, I believe. So this is the middle, right? It's around probably here. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to translate them a little bit. So I'm going to go to left arrow style, and I'm actually going to say transform, translate, and then I'm going to say 0 minus 50%. Let's see what this is going to change. And that's more like it. So I'm going to do the same thing with the right arrow style. Pretty much the same thing. So I'm just going to go transform somewhere. And I'm going to translate 0 minus 50%. And I think this is going to fix our problems. All right, good. So far, so good. Now, what you can see is that we are having smooth edges right over here. We're not having smooth edges right over here. So the right part is kind of failing for me. F12. Can I F12? Okay. All right. We are also printing something. Good. Now, this is something that I'd use for debugging probably. So right button, and left button, and they're not having. Why are they not having? Okay, probably I missed it. Okay, let's see. We go to style, right arrow styles. It's where did I place the border radius? I'm not entirely sure. Oh yeah, it's in the div. So left button is this one, and right button over here is not having it probably. So border radius, I'm just going to copy that and I'm going to place it over here. And yeah, there we go. It's looking nice. Now, what you can do for this part over here, as you can see, this part shouldn't be like, it's not bothering me, but this part should be a bit more like so. So like this, right? And it should only be smooth right over here. Now, what you can do is I'm gonna give you a tutorial, a real quick one. What you can do is you can position onto the lower part some div. Oops, sorry for this. Let me choose the red. Onto the lower part some div, and then you can actually translate it here to the left part. This div is going to be rectangle, and here you're just going to say that it's not going to be transparent, or it's not going to be. It's going to pick this color and actually represent it. This is going to remove this edge over here. I think this is too much work for something so minor. I like it this way, and that's why I'm just going to leave it this way for now. All right, let's go back to Visual Studio. And what I'm actually going to do next is I'm going to be playing around with the buttons. Now, I do know that these buttons should be doing something. So in the class name over here, I'm going to say onClick. And onClick is going to be equal to, since it's right, it's going to go to next. Then I'm going to copy this function. If it's left, it's going to go to previous. Wonderful. Now we're going to start with the left arrow, and here I'm going to create the function, and it's going to be const, and what was the name? Always forget. Go to previous. Okay. I'm going to say go to previous. This is going to be equal to a function. I'm just going to write it over here. You can also type it over here, but it doesn't matter. And go to previous is going to do the following thing. Now I'm going to check if I am the first slide. So I'm going to say const is first slide. This is going to be equal to current index, current data index equals 0, right? And then I'm going to check if it's equal to 0 or if it's not. If this is the case, then we're going to have a true. So I'm going to say const new index, new data index is going to be equal to is first slide. Then I'm going to ask, right, if it's true. If it's true, because you know that I'm going to go to previous, meaning that let's say like this. I'm having these 4 dots, and I'm right over here. I'm pressing the left icon. Either I can do nothing, and I can do this animation, which I believe Netflix has, like a little bit boom, pop, like a bump, or I can just go straight to this one. I'm going to go straight to this one, obviously, because it's the more easier thing to do. But the bump animation is going to be interesting for another video. And I need to choose this thing over here. So I need to get the final URL of the data index. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to say if it's the first slide, if it's the first dot, and I'm actually pressing the left, then I'm going to put the new data index as data.length -1. Otherwise, I'm just going to set the current index to be the next one. Let me just do this, and I'm going to say index +1. Actually, -1. Sorry, it's not plus because we're going left. So I'm going to say current data index right over here, -1. So now we have achieved the new data index, and that's going to be Very interesting, because currently we don't need to do anything. We just see the set current data index, and we're stating that the new data index should be the new data index. Now this is going to be amazing because we have to define the function go next. Now this is going to be amazing because once I actually change the data over here, it's going to trigger a re-render, because the background image here is dependent on the data of the current index, right? So I'm changing this current data index on the use state, and that's what's triggering the re-render. And I'm just going to switch the image without doing anything. So that's actually a pretty wonderful trick. Now the same thing is going to happen to the const go to next. So let's write it over here. This is going to be the function. And this function is actually going to be pretty easy. Now I'm going to check const is last slide. I'm going to check if the last slide is actually current data index equal to data.length -1. What I'm going to check with this way is pretty much the same thing, but reverse. Now let me just remove this. What I'm going to check is, let's say that I have all of the dots and I am positioned over here. And these are the divs, right? And I'm pressing the right button. I am going to check, okay, I'm in the last spot. So basically I'm going to say start from the beginning, right? If I'm here, I'm just going to increment to here. Very simple. So I'm going to check is last slide, and by creating the new data index, it's going to be equal to is last slide available. If it is, then I'm just going to go straight to 0. If it's not, I'm going to say current data index +1. And finally, what I need to do is I need to say set current data index to the new data index tab, and let's go to check it out. So let's actually see, right. This is a shitty photo, right. And now I'm on the end, and when I say right again, I'm going straight to the beginning. If I'm in the beginning and I'm going to the left, I'm going to go straight to the end. That's wonderful. That's how it's supposed to work, and it's working amazingly. Good. Let's go back now. We have still work to do. The final part that we need to do is the dots. The dots are probably the trickiest part in this tutorial. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say something like this, and I'm going to render here the data that I get, .map. Now why .map? Well, because if I have 6 pieces of data, I want to have 6 points. If I have 10 pieces of data, I want to have 10 points, obviously. We're only going to have 5 only, right? So that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to map the slide, and I'm going to say slide index. And here, let's render the dots. The first thing that I want to do is to create a dot containers. So that's what I'm going to do, the dot styles in the dot containers. Now what I'm going to do first is I'm going to say div. And for some reason it didn't auto-completed it. On the div, I'm going to say the first thing that I want to do is to have a key slide index, just so it's different all the time and I do not have any problems, and console logs, console warnings. Class name here is going to be equal to dot style. All right, wonderful. Now into this dot style, I'm going to have a new div, because I need to be sure that in this div I'm placing, you guessed it, a simple dot. You can place icons. It doesn't really matter. You can place, for example, if you're building, that's very wonderful. If you're building a pizza app, right? So an app for selling pizzas, for example, you can have pizza icons over here, and based on whatever pizza you're at, you're going to have different icons over here glowing into different colors. For example, that's going to be pretty amazing. And for example, one pizza is going to be for charity, and this pizza is going to be glowing in green. Or one pizza is going to have promotion, and the pizza is going to glow in red, for example. That's going to be pretty amazing. But for now, we're just going to be using a simple dot. We're not going to be using anything from Material UI. Here, I have to say style is going to be equal to, and let's see what we're going to be equal to. Because I'm doing this because I need to say, okay, if I am in the current slide, if the current slide index is equal to the index of the dot, then I need to change the color of the dot. So what I'm going to say is I'm going to say color, and now we need to be picking a color. picking a color is going to be done in the following way. If the index that we're getting from the map function is equal to our current data index, then I'm going to go with a blue color, right? Otherwise, however, I'm going to go with a simple black color. So I'm going to say black. There we go. Simple, very simple. Now, if I go here, I do not know if they're going to be appearing. Ooh, very bad. Let's see. Okay, I cannot see if this color is, to be honest, it seems blue to me, so everything seems to be blue, which shouldn't be the case. Div style color should be, if slide index is equal to the current data index, it's going to be blue, otherwise it's going to be red, for example. Let's see red. Can I see this? Yeah, there we go. Now this is easily seeable. You can see that the first image is blue and the other ones are red. And now when I type onto the right side over here, I'm going to traverse it down and I'm going to color all of these blue. So let's see. Boom, there you go. Second image, second dot is blue. Third image, third dot is blue. And you guessed it. When I go to the final image and I press right, I'm going to go obviously straight to the beginning. So this one is going to be colored blue. There you go. Wonderful. This is wonderful. This is all done. And now we need to be... Also, we need to actually say something over here. I want to have an on-click. I'm actually going to go right over here. I'm going to say on-click. It's going to be equal to go to slide. And I'm going to say slide index. I'm going to also make it. So that's going to be const go to slide. It's going to be equal to a function that takes the index. And pretty much what I'm going to do is I'm going to say set current data index of index. There we go. Wonderful. So now if I actually go over here. Okay, I'm not seeing anything. I'm not seeing anything because I have some problems over here. Uncut errors. Too many re-renders. Oh, yeah, I know what's happening. All right, let's go back. It's doing too many re-renders, but this is on click. Oh, actually, it shouldn't be doing it. Okay, I guess I have to debug a little bit and see what the problem is. So I'll catch you in a bit. All right, I catched it. It's not on click going to be equal to this. It's actually going to be equal to a function that's going to be calling this. I always do this problem, and that's why it's calling it and calling it and calling it again. So let's go to the React app and see what we're going to do. So currently I am going to be clicking on these. And as you can see, I'm switching the image without pressing the arrows of the slider. And let's just reload. We shouldn't be having any problems here. Yeah, we're having problems downloading the icon because we deleted it. All right, so as you can see, I am switching on all of these photos without problems, and now I can just use the slider to switch. All right, wonderful. And the final part for me to do is to pretty much put them right over here and to make it a little bit more beautiful. So let's do that. We have already finished with slider JSX, and let's open slider CSS, put it here onto the right side. Mitigate that, and I think this is going to be good. All right, then let's go straight to it. I'm gonna say dots container styles. I'm gonna choose something for it. Now, what I want is I want this to be positioned like this, right? I want it to I do not want it to be in a column wise like this. Currently, it is in a column wise. I do not want it like that. I want it to be in a row wise. So the first thing that I'm going to obviously change is display flex direction. I want it to be row, and I'm going to align everything to the center. So this should be done. Let's see. There we go. All right. It's looking good. And now what we need to do is we need to target each individual dot. One problem that you might get is that each of these, since we are doing it in a map function, is going to be staying horizontally, not vertically. Actually, it's going to be standing vertically, not horizontally. Sorry. And what you can do and how I mitigate this is, actually, can I show you? If I say dot style, I'm going to try to produce this problem. I'm going to say cursor pointer, and I'm going to say font size 55 pixels because I want them to be big. And if I go now, actually for me it's working. But for you, what you might see is this dot, then this dot, then this dot, then this dot right over here. Even though you say display flex is going to be flex direction is going to be row. What you can do then is you can go here and you can say margin is going to be 0.5 pixels, and you can play around with the margin. It's going to make it better and is going to place it as it should. Because obviously here we're having a little bit space and then it just re-renders a bit differently, and that's why it's placing it here in the row. Of course, I do not want to keep this as a red. I wanted to keep it as a black, and the project is actually finally done. If I go here now, let's actually test it. I can go right, 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 left, 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 and of course I can just run as much as I want on this carousel image slider. Wonderful. Probably one thing else that we can do is to play around a little bit with this to be a bit more interactive, because currently it's looking, yeah, let's actually do this, you know, a little bit extra from me for you. So let's actually go here to the slider. I'm going to go to where my button is, so left arrow style, and here I'm going to say transition is going to be 0.2 seconds. I'm going to say left arrow style on hover is going to have, what's going to have? It's going to go bigger. So 62 pixels. All right, wonderful. And I'm going to do the same thing to the right arrow style. So I'm going to copy this transition, I'm going to place it over here. I'm going to say dot right arrow style on hover. And I'm going to say font size pixels like this to be 62. All right, so let's actually see how this looks. All right, it's not looking bad. However, it's too big for me. I'm just going to go with 60, or I can go with 57. Let's go with 57. I have a feeling that 57 is actually going to be good. All right, go now. Boom. All right, that's wonderful for me. I think I like this quite a lot. So as you can see now on hover, this is playing a little bit, and I like it quite a lot. What you can play around with is on hovering on these buttons, they can actually appear a little bit up, a little bit on top. So you can play around with these. But so far, I'm very happy with the slider. Thank you for watching. And if you have any questions, do not fear to post them in the comment below or to write me an email. I try to answer everything that I actually get. Thank you for watching. Do not forget to subscribe, like, bye.